All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into the legendary story of the Endurance and Shackleton's truly miraculous Antarctic survival. We're going to completely strip away the comforts of the modern world here and plunge straight into a place where Mother Nature holds absolutely all the cards and human life hangs by an incredibly thin, freezing thread. So right now, I want you to mentally transport yourself far, far away from your comfortable chair, away from central heating, and entirely away from the concept of absolute safety. I mean, seriously, ask yourself, could you survive a bone-chilling minus 50 degrees Celsius with absolutely no help? Imagine being stuck in the middle of the most desolate, unforgiving, frozen wasteland on Earth. You've got no smartphone. You have no GPS. There's zero possibility of calling an emergency hotline. And the absolute cherry on top, the very ship you were living on has just been crushed into splinters by the relentless pressure of the ice. I think most people would just throw in the towel right then and there. But today, we're exploring the incredible story of a group of men who absolutely refused to die. I want you to just burn this number into your brain for a second. 497. That is the staggering number of days that Sir Ernest Shackleton and his crew went without touching solid ground. Just really think about that. Over a year and a half living on an unstable, shifting, melting floor of ocean ice. The stakes here are monumental. Every single minute of every one of those 497 days was a brutal battle against starvation, extreme cold, and complete mental breakdown. So how did they get there? Well, things went wrong incredibly fast. In November 1914, Sir Ernest Shackleton, his crew of 27 men, and believe it or not, one secret stowaway, set sail from Britain at the absolute peak of optimism. But just think about how quickly the timeline actually devolves. By January 1915, they are completely stuck, just trapped in the ice. And by October 1915, their grand expedition turns into a catastrophic fight for survival when their ship is finally crushed. Before all that disaster hit, they had this monumental goal. They actually wanted to be the very first humans to cross the entire Antarctic continent on foot. We're talking a 2,900-kilometer trek that was planned for 120 days. But they hit the Weddell Sea. It's essentially this giant trap where ice gets packed in and simply cannot escape. Their ship, the Endurance, got caught right in it. So their planned 120-day walking expedition was violently derailed. They were stuck for months, drifting further and further away from their intended landing point. It wasn't just bad luck, you know. It was a situation that would demand the ultimate lesson in extreme adaptability. 24 hours of total darkness. Try to put yourself in their boots for a minute. Can you imagine the profound mental toll of that? They spent the entire Antarctic winter in complete and utter night. You can't see the horizon, you can't see rescue, you can barely even see your hands in front of your face. And all you can hear, day in and day out, is the horrifying, ear-piercing sound of the ice groaning, shifting and pressing against the wooden hull of your trapped ship. It was, without a doubt, an extreme test of psychological endurance. And eventually, the pressure just became way too much. On October 24th, 1915, the ice literally started crushing the Endurance like an eggshell. Shackleton realized his ship was completely done for, and he ordered his men to abandon it. They stood there on the frozen ocean and watched as the Endurance, which, remember, was their shelter, their supply depot, their only link to the outside world, was swallowed whole by the ice and sank 10,000 feet down to the bottom of the sea. Now, this exact moment marks a brilliant pivot in Shackleton's leadership. Setting up what they called Ocean Camp on the floating ice, he knew that physical survival was going to require a drastic mindset shift. Leading by example, he actually took his own gold coins and his Bible, and he threw them straight into the snow. Gold meant absolutely nothing here. A single biscuit, a piece of raw seal meat, that was their new currency. By leaving behind their most precious, valuable items to save weight for the brutal journey ahead, he clearly signaled to his men, pure survival is now our one and only priority. So the crucial point to take away here is that surviving the elements is really only half the battle, right? The other half is surviving your own mind. Shackleton knew for a fact that if his men became bored or depressed on that melting ice floe, they would simply give up and die. So he mandated daily jobs to maintain strict routine and discipline. He instituted brutal rationing just to stretch their food. And eventually, in a deeply traumatic but necessary decision to prevent mass starvation, they even had to eat their own sled dogs. It's just a harrowing testament to the mental fortitude required just to wake up and keep going. But the ice floe they were living on was melting. It literally began breaking apart right beneath their feet. On April 9, 1916, they had absolutely no choices left. They had to bet everything on 3 tiny lifeboats they had managed to salvage from the ship. They launched them into the freezing open ocean. For 5 agonizing days, they battled compounding geographical odds, giant crashing waves, and dehydration so severe that the men's tongues literally swelled up in their mouths. But against all odds, they finally hit land. Elephant Island. It was the first solid ground they had touched in almost 500 days. But reaching land wasn't actually a victory. Well, not yet anyway. Elephant Island was a complete dead end. It was just a deserted rock with 0 passing ships. Sure, they were safe from the melting ice, but they would eventually just starve to death there because nobody in the world knew where they were. Shackleton realized that rescue wasn't coming to them. They had to go to the rescue. So he, along with 5 of his absolute best men, prepared to cross the most dangerous sea in the world to find help. And this is where the tension just skyrockets. 1,300. That is the distance in kilometers they had to cross across the Drake Passage, literally the most notoriously violent stretch of ocean on the planet. 22. That was the size of their boat in feet. A tiny 22-foot wooden lifeboat going up against the open ocean. 12. 12 meters. That is the height of the waves crashing down on this tiny boat. Giant, towering walls of freezing water hitting them relentlessly in the absolute dead middle of the Antarctic winter. 10,000. By some absolute miracle, they did hit land at South Georgia Island, where the whaling station was. But of course, they landed on the wrong side. So to reach help, these starving, freezing men had to climb 10,000-foot icy mountains. And they had to do it without any professional climbing gear. They just drove screws they pulled from their boat straight into their shoes. It was a geographical nightmare. In fact, it was a feat so difficult, professional climbers with modern gear wouldn't successfully repeat it until 1955. 36. For 36 hours straight, Shackleton and his men walked, climbed, and slid down glaciers. Absolutely no sleep, pushing the absolute outer limits of human physiology until, finally, cutting through that icy wind, they heard the sound of a steam whistle. The whaling station. They had actually made it. But Shackleton wasn't done. He was safe, yeah, but 22 of his men were still starving back on Elephant Island. He immediately set about organizing a rescue, and it wasn't easy. It took 4 desperate rescue attempts and 3 agonizing months of battling pack ice to finally break through. Shackleton's selfless determination meant he simply refused to stop until he got his crew back. And here is the miraculous payoff. On August 30th, 1916, Shackleton's rescue ship finally reached Elephant Island. Against all environmental and geographical odds, after the ship crushing, the ice floes, the open boats, the mountains, there were 0 casualties. Every single man he had left on that beach was alive. This legacy perfectly aligns with our core takeaway here. Shackleton originally went to Antarctica to be a hero of exploration, right? To cross the continent and claim a world record. But the ice had a very different plan. By pivoting his focus entirely to the survival of his crew, maintaining fierce team discipline, and showcasing exceptional, selfless leadership, he came back as something far greater. He came back a hero of humanity. So, as we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. We look at all this history through the safety and comfort of our modern screens. But strip all that away for a second. Could you have survived 2 years in the ice? Do you have that well of mental fortitude inside of you? Just reflect on that. It's an unbelievable testament to what the human spirit can endure when it absolutely has to. If you found this breakdown of Shackleton's impossible journey fascinating, make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss out when we uncover the structured truth behind our history's greatest stories. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I will see you in the next explainer.